Hey, welcome back to the Design Edge, Stories from the Trenches. Again, this is Seth Jr. and today I'm going to be doing another whiteboard session. I found these really useful to me as well as Boss Man, and for two reasons. One, I get a better understanding of what I do and what we do, and two, we can sort of hopefully start using this as foundations for what we want to do in the future. We plan on having a lot more of these, and this is the second in this little series that I am in charge of doing instead of producing. So I'm very excited to bring this to you today. So before we move on to talking about 6 different categories of the persona, I'd like to spend some time talking about 3 different variables. These 3 different variables are the opinions, the individual itself, as well as background. And what these variables really help us to do is to establish empathy, and it's a great connector for our clients to really understand their consumer. We focus on opinions, we want to look at the past as well as the future. And then we can start asking questions, and we really develop and focus around 3 questions that are: what can be done, how can it be done, and who does it? Now when we look at the individual, a large part of the time we want to look at success and failures, but more than that, we also want to look at the barriers, and the barriers I always like to represent by track hurdles. And then we move on to the background, and the background largely is based on demographics as well as the areas that they've lived. And this is important because a lot of what we do is local, and connecting empathy that was previously mentioned is in large part done because you understand where people came from. In saying that, let's take a look at the 6 different categories, and we're going to start off with I am. This is the first category in the persona. It's one of the most important to establish empathy, and it includes a lot of different demographics. For example, age, ethnicity, location, occupation, and a bunch of other stuff, and some other stuff meaning like education and things that the organization might find useful when prototyping or generating ideas and solutions. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about what I am really means to me, and that's the "Hello, my name is" badge or sticker that you have to wear when you're introducing yourself or not familiar with the territory. But anyways, I digress. I am, this whole category is all about the family role as well, and daily habits and routines often factors into this, especially when we're talking about health. So moving on to values, it's also called beliefs sometimes, but we won't talk a lot about the distinction between the two. But values, again, largely come from our family, which means our morals, as well as our education and a bunch of other stuff. As a result, this can be extended into the society and the community we live in, and then eventually religion and politics, but we don't really like to talk about that. But moving on, goals. This is really in terms of health for us. This is something that's more specific. It's specific towards the client that you have. And often involves occupation and hobbies, as well as things that happen in society and in communities. As you can see, an example of this could be to be a sort of business person or to receive a higher form of education eventually one day. And then the I need category. This one, to me, is the one that stands out the most. It's sort of the resources that you might have or not have access to. It's for family, and it's to help you accomplish your goal. One of the things that we do for qualitative data is blank would help blank to accomplish blank goal. And this really helps us to identify opportunities based on tangible things that we've heard. So the barriers, these are the things that really just get in the way or prevent our goals. And they're usually in relation to health for us, again, because we work a lot with health companies. But it's anything inconvenient. And it's also a lot about support and how you can get more support to them. It's anything that can sort of lead a client in a way that you want them to think. And then for opportunity, it's how do you achieve goals? It's how we can help to achieve ideal health a lot of the times for us. It's how to support them and make it easier, going back to the CCI framework that we've talked about in other podcasts. So what does this actually mean for us? Well, largely it leads us into a bigger picture of thinking, and we already had established the whole empathy point. But the other thing that we can do based on these personas is to start creating these twists and turns and putting them on paper, and we're going to call that a journey map. So stay tuned next week on Thursday when we release our next whiteboard session on the whole process of journey mapping, what it means, how you do it, and then probably a recent example of how we've applied it. I know we've talked a little bit about it before. Unfortunately, we can't put out an actual image of what we used for our journey map, but yeah, we'll get into that next time. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you learned something today.